Today I'm going to show you how to set up K0s, which is a Kubernetes distribution. It is completely open source and free to use for anybody. We're also going to be using this cloud init template from Techno-Tim. He has a really good write-up and a good YouTube video on how to do this, but I will literally just be copying and pasting these 8 or 9 commands. And what cloud init does for us is it lets us create this Ubuntu template in Proxmox. So we will be able to very quickly spin up 3, 5, however many nodes we want to be used with K0s. So we're going to create a template in Proxmox, which lets us control what hardware we want, how much memory, how many CPU cores or threads. We can also go into Cloud Init, and we can set up a username and password, any DNS settings, and the main thing here is our public SSH key. So any VMs that we create using this template will automatically have our public SSH key available. That way we can connect using our private key and we can just automatically SSH into it. And more importantly, this is how K0s does its automated install. So it will reach out using the SSH keys to automatically install K0s on these nodes. Once we have our K0s cluster up and running, I will show you how to use Lens to connect to it. You can view metrics and just interact with your cluster using Lens. So first we want to create a template in Proxmox so that we can create multiple Ubuntu VMs that are exactly the same. So Techno-Tim has an awesome write-up here on how to use Cloud Init and create a template. So we're just going to follow that. We're just going to copy and paste these 8 or 9 commands into the shell of our Proxmox node, and that will create a template. So I'm just going to click on shell here and then go back and forth between Techno-Tim's tutorial and Proxmox. So let's start with the first one here. It is just downloading a cloud image of Ubuntu. I already have it, but we'll do it again. So you can see that downloaded. Let's go to the next command, and we are going to edit this just because I already have one in place. I'm going to change this a little bit. Feel free to just leave it alone or customize it to suit your needs. So I'm going to go to 4 cores, 4096, and I'm going to change the ID of the template. So you can see I have one already called 8000, so I'll just name this one 9000. So with those few changes made, let's go ahead and hit enter. Super quick there. Move on to the next command. And again, I have to change this ID number to 9000. I'll have to do that on all the commands going forward. So we've imported the disk. Make sure you change that ID in every spot. So we've attached it as a SCSI drive. And this is super simple, just following the tutorial from Techno-Tim and changing the IDs. Oops. So here we're adding the cloud init drive. We're going to set up the boot disk. And lastly, add serial so we can actually see it in the console. So with that said, now you can see that I have almost a template here, but now is the time to go and make our changes. And looking at the hardware here, we have 4 gigs of memory and 4 cores, basically 4 threads. I don't see any issues there, so let's move on to Cloud Init. Okay, Trey from the future here. In doing some debugging, trying to get this to work, I realized that I did not update the disk size, so it's still running at like 2 gigabyte hard drives, so we need to fix that. So click on the hard disk, resize. I'm just going to increase it by 10 gigabytes, should be plenty. So this is where we're going to make most of our changes. I want to start by changing the IP config, and I want to change this from static to DHCP. If you don't do that, your VMs will not have any networking. And then let's go to user, edit, tray. You can change the password. I'm not going to do anything with DNS, but I am going to do something with SSH public key. Okay, so before we create our first VM, let's add our SSH key. To set that up, I'm going to run this command in the terminal. SSH keygen, type RSA, bits 4096, and then a comment. Let's put trade as DevOps. What do I want to name this? We'll call it mini K0s. I'm not going to add a passphrase. There we go. And don't worry, I'm going to be deleting this key, so no security risk there. So now I will cat the public key, and we will just grab all of this and copy it, and take this back over to Proxmox. Again, in our template 9000, cloud init, click SSH public key, edit, and we're just going to paste that whole thing in there. You can also load it from the SSH key file itself. Click OK. So now we're ready to create our first VM. We'll go back to the mini shell. I'm going to use the 9000 template. The new VM will have the ID 135, and we call it K0s 1. You can see it popped up here. And we can right click, start it. So we'll give it a few minutes, and once it's created, I'm going to go onto my router settings and try to find the new VM that was created, try to find that IP address. So I'm going to go to devices, wired, and then scroll down, and I see one called Ubuntu with a 216 IP address. So we're going to try that. Come back over here to the terminal. SSH tray. Wait, let's do SSH-I mini.pub. Sorry, private key, not the public key. 192.168.1.216. Yes. And there you go. You can see we're in first try. That is awesome. So you can see that the template did in fact use our SSH key that we set up, which is what we wanted. Perfect. So now that we're into the first one, we can create two more, and then we'll start installing K0s. Okay, so now that that first VM is created and we've successfully logged in with our SSH key, let's go ahead and make two more. So go back to the shell. We have K0s 2. And K0s 3. And we can start both of those. Okay, so using that same process, just looking at my router and what devices are on my network, I was able to find the second one, the second VM, and the third VM should be this right here. I believe it, what was it? 92. So there we go. Also make sure you take note of these IPs. So I just have a short list here. So K0s1 is .216, .170, and .92. That'll be important later for when we're installing K0s. And you can see we're logged into 1, 2, and 3. So now that we're set up with Cloud Init and we have 3 Ubuntu VMs running, now we can move on to the K0s install. And shout out again to Techno Tim, go check him out. Okay, with all of that set up out of the way, we have our 3 VMs running and we're able to SSH into them. Now it's time to start installing K0s. So go to k0sproject.io and click this Getting Started button. What we want to do is using K0s CTL. So click this right here. And what this is basically a YAML install, kind of like Ansible. So you'll download this from GitHub and basically run this init command to get your own k0ctl.yaml file. You'll open up that YAML file and just add in your IP addresses of all the servers that you want and your public key and also the user. So I have to change that to Trey, for example. And it will do all of the install for you. But don't worry if that sounds like a lot, I'll walk you through it. Okay, so we're going to start by downloading this GitHub repo. And actually that looks good to me. I'm just going to do a brew install. So let's jump back over to VS Code. Okay, so I'm still logged into my 3 over there, and I'm in a new folder called K0s Workspace. So let's do a brew install K0ctl. And if you don't know what brew is, it's Homebrew. It's a package manager for Mac. You can download it at homebrew.com, I believe. Sorry, brew.sh. You just run this command here to install it. Super easy. And then you can come back and run this command here. So you can see we're in the middle of the install here. Okay, I thought that was fixed, but basically we have to run this command again with architecture ARM64 in front of it. Sorry about that. So this should work now. Okay, so it looks like we have K0s installed now. Or K0ctl, excuse me. So let me just see if this works, just running init. Okay, so that's working fine. So what we're gonna do now is export this init to a file we can actually use. So run that same init command and export, I forget the actual term for that arrow, but we're gonna send it to a file called k0ctl.yaml in our working directory. So you can see that pop up over here in VS Code, and now we can edit it. So this is super simple. You can actually add a lot more things to this, but we're just sticking to the basics today. So what I'm going to do is change these IP addresses to the relevant ones for me. I'm going to look at my notes here. 192.168.1.216. This will be Trey. Okay, so we're just going to do our home directory.ssh mini. Don't remember that file name. mini-k0s.pub. Okay, so we're going to copy this now. And notice this is K0s1, and this one is going to be a controller, and the rest of them will be workers. So we're just going to copy and paste this part, overwrite this. Don't forget to update this IP. So number 2 is 170. The user is still Trey, port still 22. And we're actually going to copy this and add another worker. Just as part of YAML, make sure these are all lined up, otherwise you'll get an error. And the last IP is 92. And this one can stay the same because we want 2 workers and 1 controller. Okay, that looks good. Everything else you can leave the same. Make sure your IPs are up to date. And you have 1 controller and as many workers as you want. In this case, we have 3 VMs total. So 1 controller, 2 workers. Okay, looking good. Let's go back to the instructions here. Oops. Okay, so we've already run this first one, exporting that to the YAML file. Now we just need to run an apply. So we've done step 1. We've worked through step 2. Let's go ahead with our apply and see what happens. Really quick, this is what we expect to see. Something like this, connected, detecting operating systems, and installing. So let's try it. So we're just going to run a K0 apply and reference this config file. Let's hit enter and see what happens. So you can see I'm getting this can't connect error. That's my fault. It's actually highlighted right in my face. We want to send the private key, not the public key. That's the public key is what we installed on the server. The private key is what we authenticate with against that. So with that fixed, I believe this should work now. Okay, so we at least got further. It recognized the host name, discovered ETH0, okay. Okay, so time to Google. I'll come back once I figure this out. Okay, so I'm getting this other failure now, saying it exited with status 23. Okay, so we've rebooted all the VMs after increasing the hard disk size. We were able to log in again, and you can see usage of the root drive. We have plenty of space now. Let's just try this again. Let's try this command again. This apply. There we go. That's looking better. Okay, so clearly the issue was we just didn't have enough space on the hard drive to download K0s. Make sure you increase the hard disk size. 2 gigabytes is not enough to download K0s. It will fail. Okay, you can see that K0CTL was installed. That is awesome. So all of our nodes are reporting in. It was downloaded on each one. We didn't have to do much. So now we can run this command to get our kube config. Okay, there we go. I'm actually going to export that just to a regular kube config. There we go. Okay, so now let's go to Lens. Okay, now that we've opened up Lens, let's go to Catalog, Clusters, and the blue button down here, kube config. Yes. There we go. We can click on our cluster. Oh, that was fast. Yes, there we go. That is awesome. You can see we have K0s 2 and 3. These are our worker nodes. They're about 2 minutes old. That is perfect. You can see our nodes, they're ready. It does take a little bit for the metrics to come in, but you will see this eventually. No workloads, pods. Let's see. So this is where all of your workloads would be. If there's any interest, I'll definitely make some more videos on how to play around with Kubernetes. Oh, there's Helm charts. That's awesome. Yeah, so these are all different apps that you can install. But yeah, our cluster is up and running. That's pretty much it for this video. Thanks for watching. Let me know if you have any comments or questions